First things first, who has worked with React? A show of hands? React Native? Okay, so for those who haven't worked with React, if you have React questions, those guys that have their hands up, please do ask them. I don't know much a lot about React, the website component side of it. I just jumped in and just tried React Native. So there was a bit of learning in the process. So I'm here today, I'm going to be talking about React Native. Basically, the idea is just how can we get started? And there's some of the things that I'm hoping to go through. If we have time, we are going to go through some demos as well. Okay, without wasting much time, React Native. So what is React Native? Basically, it's just a JavaScript library that you're going to use to build native applications. I think I just needed to clarify that we are not building hybrid apps, but you're building pure native apps using React Native. So it's just a JavaScript library that you can use. Why? There are a bunch of things that you might need to consider. For me personally, I think this is one of those things that really stuck when I started playing with React Native, to say we all have been used to the idea of write once, run everywhere. And I think this is one of the things that the Facebook guys have done very well, to say, how about if we rethink how we do development? How about if we focus on learning once, but write everywhere? And I think their goal is not for you to have one code base that you can run across, but what they found out is you can have the same code base, but share most of the code. And one of the other things is standardized APIs. You can benefit from that a lot with standardized APIs. You see later when I demo how to do layout. So if you understand how to use a list view for Android, the syntax will be the same on how to use a list view for iOS as well. So you'll benefit from that a lot. And for those who are already using React, the benefit is it's just React for mobile development as well. So if you haven't started, it'll be slightly different, but if you're already on React, then that's a plus for you. Apps, of course, these are native apps, they're responsive, and you can get a lot from the UI and everything. I do believe most of us here, we are web developers, so you'll notice when we walk through the setup and the tooling, this will be a familiar development experience for most of you. But for those, I think I saw some hands coming out, for those coming from the native side, but trying React Native, the experience might be different, but if you're coming from web to React Native, that would be much better. So just a general overview of why you might want to try React if you have it and you're a web dev. I think that those are some of the compiling things that you can just have in mind there. And speaking of UI components, like I said, we have seen some components during the day. React, this is what it does very well. It creates UI components in a declarative way that you can just use. So you're going to define in your code, you're going to define your UI in React, and React will render it for you. Now, when it does the rendering, which is what we're going to look later, it's just going to hook into the native APIs for whichever the platform you're targeting. So here's an example that we have there. So that's a map view specifically for iOS, and that's a declarative syntax. You define what you want your UI to look like, you pass in some properties and state, and when React renders, it's going to hook in and call in the native component for you. And just a little bit for those who will be curious, just to look at how exactly is React Native doing this or achieving this, learn once and try to write everywhere. The bridge. So essentially, what you do have is you have your JavaScript side, which I think most of us are very familiar with, and you have your native side. So basically, you have two realms that you want to be able to communicate. The logic, your business logic is going to be, mostly in your JavaScript, and for rendering, that is being done on the native system. So here's a sequence of events that you might try to visualize how React will interact or work. So most of the activities are going to start from your native layer. For example, you trigger a touch, or there's a timer, for instance. As an example, with the touch event, you can touch on the screen, react on on the native side, it's going to gather what it needs, passes it through a bridge, serializes a bunch of other things, calls your event listener. JavaScript is event-driven, so you can have an event queue that will basically listens for events coming from the native. It does what it needs to do, processes, and then if you have any other methods that you have, if you have any other method that you need to use on a JavaScript, you code those, you code those, and then you send a response. Okay, I'm going to be walking through a demo. I'm just going to skip the demo part, but we're going to see how we can actually bridge this. So what the React Native guys have done, they have tried to put some of the most useful APIs between the two different platforms of Android and iOS for now. And it's evident that they are not going to be able to port all the APIs that you might need. But what they've done for us as developers is they've given us a way where we can hook into the system, call whatever we want to call. Let's say you already have an existing code base, or for either performance reasons, you need to write a component in native, you can use native modules. So basically, that's what they allow you to do. You have your Objective-C, Java for Android, for instance. These are the two methods that will do most of the magic. There are macros. Most of the time, there are macros that you're going to be using for you to interact with your native modules. As the name suggests, RCT export module, it just makes the bridge aware of your code. And then this one, the method itself, this is what will allow you to define the name of the method from your native code and how you would like it to be called from the JavaScript side. You can pass in, it can be used for both ways. You can use it to have JavaScript write, or we have JavaScript get a response from the native side. As an example, here's a hello world. So basically what is happening there, I know it's Objective-C, can be a little bit scary for most of us, but basically what is happening, we're importing a header there, which is RCT bridge module, which is the React Native bridge that will export that interface or method for us. So this is just an interface. We say hello world, which is the name of the class, and then we implement some of the methods there. And then your implementation, so this is your Objective-C file, which is implementing that say hello class. So the RCT module is just going to make your bridge aware of this method to say when you want to call it, this is how you can call it. And then in the export, we have a get method there, which is the method that we are going to call using sync. So with React, the communication between your native and JavaScript is going to be async, so we can make use of promises so that we don't have issues with threading. So basically, get is the method that we are going to use in the JavaScript, and then that RCT callback, that's the name of the callback, you have some string. So in here, if you have anything that is specific that you want to hook in, you can do that. It's either you are using local storage, or you want to have access to a camera or save data or whatever you might want to do, or you just want to update something that lives in a native device. This is where you are likely to, this is how you are going to implement the bridge interface. I'm going to show demos for some of this just to see how it works. And then as for the layout, for most of us coming from the web, I think this is where things get a little bit interesting if you're using CSS. I don't know about most of you. I'm not a really, really big CSS guy. If you're coming from the native environment, laying out in the React Native is going to look slightly different for you. But for the most web guys, it will be an easy thing to pick up on. And this is where we also see that standardized API and lane once, write everywhere approach coming into play. So what these guys have done, they've gone out, looked for a layout system that they can use for both platforms. So they've went with Flexbox. So they have done their re-implementation of Flexbox, picked some of the stuff that they think will be really useful. So with React, when you do your layouts, whatever layout system or component you build, you can use it between both platforms, which I think is really, really important. And there's another thing, a big plus for us in here, most of us in here, is their implementation is just a JavaScript literal. So you have a key value pairs that you can define your markup and you can import. You can have these live somewhere else or can have them live within your component, which is a big win. So like example, you have a container with a flex, you give it a value, you give it a property, and then you give it a value, and then you can just style your components like that. And then this setting up, I'm not gonna do much on those, but it's pretty much what we are used to with npm install. You install your React CLI globally, and then if you want to start, this is I can start on a project, which is pretty cool, I think. And then resources, I'm just going to touch a bit on resources. I think if you really wanting to get started, which I hope you guys would want to try it, you can start here. The documentation, which is awesome, and one of the things that they have added in now is you can have your JFedo type of environments where you can have a repo within the browser and try a bunch of these other stuff. So for instance, you can try how it calls, how it works with some of the native components. And the community has been amazing. I think the community has been amazing on what they have managed to do with React. React, I think it's about close to 1.5 years since they open sourced it. Less than 2 years, but we have seen a lot of development and a lot of enthusiasm in the community. So this is a curated list of some of the stuff you can do. I'm just gonna risk it here just to see what we can get. I don't know how it's showing here, but for those interested in getting started, you can just come here. So you have almost everything. If you want to read articles, check out the internals works, you have your components, you have your examples, you have books. It's just one massive list. And also, we are starting to see libraries being built, whereby right now, if you want to do it bare bones, which I encourage if you're just starting, try it, see how it feels. But at some point, you just want to put something together very quickly. You can just pull another component library, which either it has your UI, your buttons, your menus, and everything else. And one of the, I'll highlight it a bit later. So before I go into my final thoughts, I just want to show demos and then just come back here. Just checking how I'm doing on time. The resolution here is not so great. But anyway. So this is just a demo app to show you how the components will look and just to prove that this could be actually, this is actually a native app. So I have Xcode running. I'm just gonna try and build it here, fingers crossed. Native guys, we're pretty much used to this. If you have to build, you wait, you cross your fingers and you hope things work. All right, so, just to show you guys that these are native components. Hopefully this works this time. So what I want to demo here is you can, with React Native, you can use your JavaScript Chrome debugger to debug. So I just want to, so what I've done there, I've enabled a debugger that we can see here, that we can actually debug the UI. We can actually debug our JavaScript code within Chrome debugger. So you can do your normal JavaScript debugging within event logging. And the other thing that, what I think that those coming from the native mobile development that they don't have is hot reloading or this idea of live reloading that we have always come to expect from the web community. Now you have that with React Native. It just allows you to do that. So what I'm going to just come here and do is comment that out, save my file, refresh again, and then I can navigate. Can have that. And the other thing is, this resolution really sucks. What I wanted to demo here is how we can benefit from Flexbox and adding live reloading features. So for instance, we didn't have this. So if I'm to just enable this part, save my file with live reloading without recompiling, now I have my search feature. And then here we can just do a bunch of search. You can search for a, and then it's just doing this searching here. And just to prove that this is just your normal React JavaScript stuff. I think the previous speaker has already highlighted the tool I'm also using, which is JSonSA. If you haven't used it, I would really encourage you to try it. And there we go again. God. Okay, so this is the implementation of the search. Let me just not have this all the way. Your normal JavaScript, everything sits and is being rendered in your JavaScript. So you can just add a bunch of frames. Just wanted to see if I haven't touched on anything else. Okay, I think I'm pretty much done with the demo. So apart from the resolution, apologize for that, but basically this is what you can do with React Native. And my thoughts in closing, is I think this is a tool that if you are already a web dev and you're already familiar with some of the development environment, this is something that you can just jump on, give it a try, build some prototypes, see how it works for you. It might be one of those easier ways that you can transition into native mobile development. Again, there is no web view in this one. You are actually doing native development, and how they've managed to do that, they bundle a JavaScript VM that manages your JavaScript and the debugging using WebSockets, so you benefit from that. So with iOS, the JavaScript VM already comes as part of the OS. For Android, they're actually bundling one. And one of the things that you can benefit from is code sharing. Most of these components like the list view and list everything for Android is just copy, paste, and it just works. You don't need to change anything. The interesting points or interesting things that you need to keep note of will be navigation and those platform-specific components. Like for instance, on iOS, you have a tab bar, and then on Android, you might have a side navigation one. And how you can do that is you just abstract those components, put them in separate files, maybe mesh them using one, and it gives you, again, the ability to check which OS you are in so that it can pull, it knows which files to pull in. As an example, if you look at this index.ios.js file, if you have components that are targeting a specific platform, you just need to prepend them with that prefix, or with that iOS or Android. So when your package manager builds those files, like for instance, if I was to run this on Android, it was going to pick this one, but I'm on iOS, it's actually picking this one. So let's say you have a pull to refresh feature as an example. You want it to be native for each specific one, and then you can either use the native one that you can have on that specific platform. And then just to demo the native part, this is the part that I've come not to really like, the demo part, because of what's happening. So what I just want to show you is how you can pull in the native modules in your JavaScript. So I've already done that. Let me see if this is running. Refresh. And there we are. So this part of the code lives here. So if I'm to change, as an example, but now, since that I'm changing a native component, I need to recompile. So for me to recompile, I just need to run the 2 again. Hope everything works. Whilst we're waiting for demos, I think I might as well start taking questions if for those who might have questions. All right, let's see this. Voila, so then it works. Thank you. and then this happens. So, all right, let me try again. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to jump in. I think I still have a few more minutes. I'm just gonna try to do this one more time and show you some of the things that these React Native guys have done, which I think is pretty awesome. Let's see if we can. Okay, it's running. Fingers crossed. It's running, and I just want to hook in there. So I have this enabled. So what you can do is you come in with your live reloading debugging loaded, remote.js debugging reloaded. It still does that. So basically, it's using WebSockets. It's trying to listen for that Chrome debugger to see if it's still on. So in most cases, I'll just come here and refresh this, jump it here, and then it works. But for some reason, and the screen I'm working with, really not helping that much. But this is what you can do. So you can take, or you can try to use your current skill set, see if you can build on that just to build for native platforms, which should be native apps. I don't know if there are any questions. Yes.
How did you do the reload?
The auto reload, so it depends for each platform. Here is just Command R.
Okay.
So Command R, do a reload, and then you can have hooking into some performance tuning features. If only this thing could work. If only this thing. And then just in conclusion, for those who are going to be doing performance intensive stuff, with the bridge, you want to be able to minimize how you do your interaction, because with each event or with each interaction, you are sending messages through the bridge, and they've done a bunch of customization for you. They've tried to batch a lot of commands that you can have so that you minimize on the codes that are being sent back and forth. React Native itself is still a new shiny tool. A lot of things are still being developed. The tooling itself, is you have witnessed, not so great compared to for those doing native iOS, because now you need to keep track. You have a packager running underneath, you pick a browser, this one does this one does that. Things can break. But I think this is one of those things that you have to be able to deal with for now. But they are also doing some really interesting things when it comes to tooling. We have started to see some really exciting stuff. I don't know if I'll be able to have time to see if we can demo this, but this is likely to break stuff. So this is a Dego IDE. What it does, it's specific to React Native. You can just try to spin up a new project, and what they allow you to do within the project itself, you can add components inside the IDE. So for instance, we can try to go with a view or with a mapping component, but I don't think that the connection is really going to work. But I would encourage you to have time. If you have time, you want to see how it works, or you want to play around with Flexbox, because I think it's still new. It can be really vexing in the beginning, but if you just get your head around how the laying out of the components works, it can be really something cool to play around with. All right, I think my time is almost up. Do I still have time?
I just wanted to challenge some of the things you were speaking about.
Yes.
React Native. And I want to challenge them with that new and shiny tool called NativeScript, because they are competitors, direct competitors. And one of the things that I've realized with React Native, and that's my first problem, is you have to know React.
Yes.
And that's already a problem, because with, like for example, NativeScript, you are able to use other frameworks such as Angular, and you can use your vanilla JavaScript. You don't have to use frameworks. So it gives you a bit more flexibility in terms of your options. Just like we saw with Electron, use a framework, don't use a framework, you can basically do something. But with React Native, you have to know React. That's already a disadvantage for me. The other thing is with the API access, you were showing us native modules. I saw Objective-C and I almost peed in my pants. See,
I think that's a valid point. But
Yeah.
just to answer you on that one, that's a valid point.
Yeah.
But how often are you likely to do it? So this is more,
That's
yes?
the thing, because I want to mention another advantage with native script over React Native. We had to build an app that basically one of the components, either we had to do it as a web view or we had to use a native component to display some videos. And what we found is that we didn't have to write any Java code or Objective-C. We just went straight to the Android documentation and straight to the iOS documentation, and we were able to use those classes seamlessly because of how native script does its bridge or marshalling, basically. So the class as you see it, you use it as you see it. You're not writing Java, you're not writing Objective-C. So I don't see the point of using React Native.
I think it goes back to what we have seen during the day. Which tools do you use? And I think the conclusion there was it depends. Which tool works for you?
That's true, but consider this.
Yes.
You could use any other framework with native script. You could use vanilla JavaScript and all that knowledge, whereas in the React world, you have to know React in order to be productive. You're sort of locked in, so that's already a problem.
I totally agree with you, but remember the philosophy, learn once, write everywhere. So
Yeah, but that's true. If I've learned JavaScript, I already know.
I just want to take one more question.
Can I actually ask a question on that side? So you guys are using native script, right?
Yeah.
Just one thing maybe I'm not understanding. So the React side of it is to be able to render the native components.
Yeah.
How are you using Angular to render the native components? Okay, because you were saying you could use Angular or you could use whatever.
Yeah, that's optional. You can.
As in what? As in render it in a web view?
I would encourage you to actually check out native script and because look, I'm gonna be honest to say you have the options. Just like we saw with Electron, you have the options. That's my point. Options. You're not trapped into
How about
one
you
thing.
do a talk next year on that?
Excuse me?
How about you do a talk next year on that?
Probably, yeah. Invite me.
They open up a request for talks.
Yeah.
Submit one.
I'll definitely join in.